Hello and welcome. Before we begin, I invite you to slow your breathing just a little, to let the weight of the day gently fall away, and to remind yourself that this time, this space, is meant for rest, calmness, and peaceful learning. You don't need to focus too closely. You don't need to remember every detail. Just allow my voice to drift quietly in the background, like the distant sound of waves touching an ancient shore. Tonight, we begin a long and gentle journey, a journey through the quiet. Rise of the Republic of Genoa, one of the most powerful maritime civilizations of the medieval world, born not from conquest on land, but from patience, navigation, and the endless rhythm of the sea. And before we truly begin, if you enjoy peaceful history journeys like this one, I would truly appreciate your support on the channel. Your presence here allows these calm stories to continue, helping others rest, learn, and fall asleep gently. Thank you. Now, allow yourself to settle into a comfortable position. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw loosen. Let your breath find a slow, natural rhythm. If your thoughts wander, that's perfectly fine. That is exactly what this story is meant to do. Tonight, we begin in silence. Our story begins not with empires, not with fleets, not with gold or power. It begins with water, stone, and darkness. Imagine, if you wish, a quiet Mediterranean night. The sea is calm, almost perfectly still. Moonlight stretches across the water in pale silver lines. Gentle waves brush against a narrow strip of rocky shoreline. Behind the coast, steep hills rise sharply into the darkness, their shapes barely visible beneath the stars. This land feels narrow, compressed, caught between mountain and sea. This is Liguria, and nestled within this difficult, rugged landscape, long before history would remember its name, there is a small settlement by the water, walls white, grand harbor, banners flying. Just a few wooden structures, simple boats pulled onto the shore, and people who have learned, slowly, quietly, that survival here depends on the sea. This place will one day be called Genoa, but not yet. For now, it is simply a coastal village, shaped by salt air and stone, where life follows the steady rhythm of tides. Imagine early morning, mist clings to the surface of the water. The sky shifts slowly from deep blue to soft gray. Fishermen move silently, pushing narrow boats into the sea. Their movements are practiced, economical, calm. They do not rush. The sea cannot be hurried. Behind them, the hills remain still and watchful. There is little fertile land here. Farming is difficult. Paths are steep and narrow. The people of this coast learn early that their future does not lie inland, that it lies outward, toward the open watered and the ancient world. Geography shapes destiny, and Genoa's geography is demanding. The mountains press close, leaving little room to expand. The soil is thin. Rivers are short and steep. There are no wide plains, no gentle valleys, but the sea, is open. It leads everywhere. And so, quietly, without ceremony or ambition, the people of this coast begin to look beyond the horizon. First, their journeys are small, short trips along the Ligurian coast, fishing, trade between neighboring villages, simple exchanges of salt, fish, olive oil, and wine. But with every voyage, something changes, knowledge accumulates, the currents are learned, the winds are remembered, the stars become familiar companions, boats become better built, sails are adjusted, routes are repeated, and slowly, a maritime instinct forms. Long before Genoa becomes a republic, long before it commands fleets and trade routes, it becomes something quieter, but far more important. A city of sailors, not warriors, not emperors, sailors, men and women who understand that survival depends on timing, patience, and cooperation with forces larger than themselves. The sea teaches humility, and it teaches endurance that as centuries pass. The Roman world rises and falls around this coast. Roman roads stretch across. Italy, Roman legions march, cities rise, flourish, and decline. Genoa exists on the edge of this world, close enough to trade, distant enough to remain overlooked. Roman ships visit the harbor. Roman merchants exchange goods. Roman influence is felt, but it never fully reshapes the soul of the settlement. Genoa remains practical local, focused on the water. When Rome eventually weakens, when imperial authority fades, when cities elsewhere fall silent, Genoa does not collapse. It simply continues fishing, sailing, trading, waiting. Imagine the harbor at dusk during these early centuries. There is no grand port wide and no stone docks, just wooden piers and natural inlets. Lanterns glow softly as boats return. Voices are low. The smell of salt, fish, and wet wood fills the air. People unload their catch. Some goods will be eaten, some traded, some preserved for journeys yet to come. Children watch the boats with curiosity. They grow up hearing stories of distant coasts, unfamiliar harbors, and long nights beneath foreign stars. For them, the world does not end at the hills. It begins at the water's edge. This is how Genoa is born, not through conquest, not through proclamation, but through continuity, through generations who learn that the sea is both danger and opportunity, a place that can destroy, and a place that can sustain. As the early medieval centuries unfold, something subtle begins to happen. Trade routes shift, old Roman systems fade, new connections form. The Mediterranean does not. Sleep.it adapts, and Genoa adapts with it. Its sailors begin traveling farther. Its merchants learn the languages of distant ports. Its ships carry not only goods, but trust. Where Genoese ships arrive, they return. Where they return, relationships form. This reliability becomes power, but that power is still invisible. For now, let your mind rest in this early Genoa, a city not yet aware of what it will become. Stone houses cling to hillsides. Paths twist and climb. The harbor breathes slowly with the tide. There are no flags announcing dominance and no fleets darkening the horizon. Only quiet persistence, only preparation. And so, as this first part gently comes to a close, remember this: great powers are rarely loud at their beginning. They grow in silence. They wait. They learn. They watch the world carefully until the moment arrives that I end the next part. We will follow Genoa as it begins to step beyond survival, as trade expands, as ambition awakens, and as the sea starts to carry Genoese ships farther than ever before, but not yet. For now, breathe slowly. Let the waves soften in your imagination. Let the harbor lights dim. Let the hills stand quietly in the darkness. The Republic of Genoa has not risen yet. It is only beginning to dream, and you may rest as the sea keeps watch. Welcome back. Before we continue, allow yourself a moment to settle once more. Let your breathing slow gently. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts loosen, like mist drifting above calm water. You don't need to hold on to every word. Just let the story move quietly around you. Steady, patient, unhurried. In the first part of our journey, we rested in the earliest world of Genoa, a narrow strip of land pressed between mountains and sea, a small coastal settlement shaped not by ambition, but by endurance. Tonight, in part 2, we remain in that calm rhythm, but something subtle begins to change. The sea, which once provided only survival, now begins to offer opportunity. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, as it always does. Imagine the Genoese harbor again, many generations after those first fishermen pushed their boats into the mist. The harbor is still modest, still quiet, but it feels more alive. More boats now rest along the shore. Their hulls are broader, more carefully shaped. There, Sails stronger, stitched with skill passed down through families. Ropes are coiled neatly, anchors are heavier. These are not ships of war. They are ships of purpose, trade ships. Early medieval Europe is changing. Old Roman roads crack and fade. Cities rise and fall unevenly, power is fragmented, kingdoms form and dissolve. But the Mediterranean remains constant. It is still the great highway of the ancient and medieval world. And Genoa sits quietly beside it, watching, learning, preparing. The Genoese begin to travel farther along the coast, not just to neighboring villages, but to distant ports. Provence, southern Gaul, the Italian peninsula, Sardinia, Corsica. Each journey adds knowledge, which harbors are safe, which winds shift suddenly, which ports welcome trade, which ones demand caution. This knowledge becomes a shared inheritance. Fathers teach sons, mothers teach daughters. Stories are told not as legends, but as instructions. Where to anchor, when to leave, when to wait. Patience becomes a virtue. Imagine a Genoese merchant standing on the deck of his ship at dawn. The water is calm, the horizon pale with early light. He is not thinking of conquest or glory. He is thinking of balance, cargo weight, wind direction. Timing. He knows that arriving too early can be as dangerous as arriving too late. This quiet calculation becomes the foundation of Genoese power. As trade grows, something else grows with it: trust. Merchants across the Mediterranean begin to recognize Genoese ships. They return. When they promise to return, they deliver what they agree to deliver. They honor agreements. In a world where violence is common and authority unstable, reliability becomes priceless. Genoa begins to build a reputation long before it builds an empire. This reputation spreads softly, like ripples across water, and with it comes wealth. Not sudden, not explosive, but steady. Gold does not pile up in towers yet, but goods move constantly: grain, salt, wine, olive oil, timber, textiles. Each exchange strengthens connections. The harbor grows busier. Warehouses appear near the shore. Stone replaces wood in some structures. Paths become streets. The city begins to turn inward, organizing itself around trade. Imagine Genoa at midday. The harbor hums softly with activity. Voices overlap in different tongues. Goods are unloaded, counted, carried. There is no chaos and no shouting. Everything moves with quiet efficiency. Genoa learns something important very early. Control does not require noise. It requires systems. Slowly, merchant families begin to rise in importance. Not through noble titles, not through bloodlines traced to kings, but through experience. A family that owns ships. A family that controls routes. A family that understands markets. Wealth in Genoa is mobile. It floats. It travels. And because of this, power begins to shift away from land and toward water. This makes Genoa different from many medieval cities. It does not dream of vast territories inland. It does not seek to dominate fields and villages. It seeks access. Ports, routes, harbors. The sea becomes its territory. As Genoa grows more confident, its sailors venture farther, toward the western Mediterranean, toward the eastern shores, toward places shaped by ancient civilizations and newer faiths. They encounter the Byzantine world. They encounter Islamic ports. They encounter cultures with deep histories and complex customs. And again, Genoa adapts. It does not impose. It negotiates. Genoese merchants learn how to exist between worlds. They learn how to trade without provoking, how to speak without offending, how to profit without threatening. This skill, the ability to move between cultures, becomes one of Genoa's greatest strengths. Imagine a Genoese ship arriving in a foreign harbor at sunset. The city beyond the water is unfamiliar. Minarets rise where churches do not. Languages sound different. But trade still speaks a common tongue. Weights are measured, prices are discussed. Hands shake. The ship unloads, the ship reloads, and when it leaves quietly carrying goods, carrying information, carrying opportunity. Back in Genoa, this information accumulates. Which rulers are stable, which regions are in conflict, where demand is rising, where risk is increasing. The Genoese do not rush toward danger. They wait, they adjust, they choose carefully. This patience allows them to survive where others fail. As the early Middle Ages progress, Genoa begins to feel less like a village and more like a city. Its population grows, its streets become denser, its harbor expands, stone walls begin to appear, not yet symbols of dominance, but of protection. The city must protect what it has built, because wealth, even quiet wealth, attracts attention. Rival ports watch Genoa carefully. Some admire, some envy, some prepare to compete. But in this era, Genoa still avoids open conflict. It is learning, saving its strength. Imagine night falling over the city, lanterns reflect on the water, ships rock gently at anchor. The hills behind the city disappear into darkness. Inside stone houses, merchants count goods, families share meals. Plans are made quietly, and no one speaks yet of republics or empires, but a shared understanding begins to form. The sea has given Genoa more than survival. It has given it direction. And direction, once chosen, is difficult to reverse. As the second part draws to a close, allow your thoughts to rest in this moment. Genoa is no longer just a coastal settlement. It is becoming something new. A city shaped by trade, trust, and patience. It does not yet command fleets. It does not yet challenge rivals. But it is preparing. In the next part, we will watch as Genoa's world grows more dangerous, as competition sharpens, and as the city begins to realize that to protect its trade, it must also learn how to fight. But not yet. For now, let the harbor quiet again. Let the sea breathe slowly. Let the city sleep. The age of power approaches, but Genoa still moves gently with the tide. Before we move forward, take one slow, gentle breath. Not a deep one, just enough to remind your body that there is no hurry. Let your eyes rest. Let your thoughts soften. Let the story continue quietly, like a tide that never stops moving. In the last part, Genoa began to change. Trade expanded, trust formed. The city learned that patience could become power. Tonight, in part 3, that calm world begins to feel different. Not louder, not chaotic, but more alert. Because where trade grows, attention follows, and where attention gathers, rivalry is never far behind. Imagine the Mediterranean once again. It looks peaceful from a distance. Blue water stretching endlessly beneath the sun. Ships moving slowly across the horizon. But beneath this calm surface, tension begins to flow. Other cities are watching: Pisa, Venice, Amalfi. Each of them stands beside the same sea. Each of them depends on the same routes. Each of them understands the same truth. Control of the sea means control of wealth. First. This rivalry is subtle. A ship arrives earlier than expected. A better price is offered. The port agreement quietly changes hands. No swords, no banners raised. Just competition. Imagine Genoese merchants returning from distant ports. They bring goods, yes, but they also bring stories. They speak of Venetian ships appearing more frequently. Of Pisan merchants offering lower prices. Of ports becoming crowded, negotiations more complex. The sea is no longer empty. It is filling with ambition. Back in Genoa, discussions grow longer. Merchants gather not just to count profits, but to share concerns. Routes are reconsidered, schedules adjusted. Still, Genoa does not rush toward confrontation. It observes, it compares, it waits. But waiting does not mean ignoring danger. Slowly, quietly, Genoa begins to adapt. Ships are reinforced. Crews are trained not just to sail, but to respond. Harbors are improved, not only for trade but for defense. This is not yet militarization. It is awareness. Imagine a Genoese ship, sailing along the Tyrrhenian Sea. The wind is steady, the crew moves calmly, but eyes scan the horizon more carefully than before. Another ship appears in the distance. Its flag is unfamiliar. The Genoese ship adjusts its course slightly, not fleeing, not confronting, just preparing. This is how tension enters the Genoese world, not as fear, but as vigilance. As decades pass, competition hardens. Pisa grows aggressive. Venice grows calculating. Each city begins to push outward, seeking dominance over key routes and ports. Genoa finds itself caught between powerful neighbors, but instead of retreating, it does something unexpected. It organizes. Merchant families begin working together more closely. Agreements form within the city. Resources are pooled. Ships are no longer just private ventures. They become shared interests. This cooperation marks a turning point. Genoa begins to understand that survival in a competitive sea requires unity. Not under a king, not under a crown, but under common purpose. Imagine meetings held in stone chambers near the harbor. Lantern light flickers against the walls. Voices remain low. Men discuss risks, routes, and responses. There is no shouting, no dramatic declarations. Only careful planning. Genoa does not want war, but it understands that trade without protection is fragile, and so, slowly, the city takes its first steps toward maritime strength. Ships begin to travel in groups. Convoys form. Escorts appear. Still, Genoa avoids provocation. It does not block routes. It does not seize ports. It protects what it has. This restraint becomes one of its defining traits. But restraint does not go unnoticed. Other cities test Genoa's resolve. A ship is delayed. Cargo is challenged. Access is restricted. Each incident is small, but together they form a pattern. The Mediterranean is becoming crowded, and crowded spaces create friction. Imagine a narrow harbor entrance at dawn. Two ships approach from opposite directions. Neither wants to yield. Sails flutter, oars slow. Finally, one ship adjusts its course. The decision is made. In the early days, Genoa often yields, not from weakness, but from calculation. There will be another harbor, another opportunity, but over time, these moments accumulate, and Genoa learns that yielding too often invites pressure. The balance begins to shift. The city does not abandon its patience, but it adds firmness. By the late 11th century, Genoa is no longer just a participant in Mediterranean trade. It is a competitor. Its ships are recognized, its merchants respected, its presence felt, and with recognition comes challenge. Pisa, in particular, emerges as a direct rival. Both cities seek influence over the same waters. Both value the same ports. Both understand that compromise has limits. The rivalry intensifies quietly. Trade routes overlap. Agreements conflict. Tensions rise. Still, open war is avoided, for now, because both sides understand the cost. Ships are expensive. Crews are valuable. Trade disruptions harm everyone. And yet, the sea does not tolerate permanent balance. Eventually, something must give. Imagine Genoa at night during this period. The city is larger now. Its harbor busier. Its walls stronger. Lanterns reflect in the water, like scattered stars. Inside homes and warehouses, people sleep. But beneath this calm surface, the city dreams differently. It dreams not just of survival, but of security. Not just of trade, but of protection. The idea begins to form, slowly and naturally. To remain free on the sea, Genoa must be able to defend itself. This idea does not arrive suddenly. It grows. Like the tide. This third part gently comes to rest. Allow your thoughts to settle here. Genoa stands at a threshold. Behind it lies a world of quiet trade and patience. Ahead lies a world where power must sometimes be shown. The sea is still calm, but beneath its surface, currents are shifting. In the next part, we will move closer to open confrontation, to the first true tests of Genoa's strength, and to the moment when rivalry turns into conflict. But not yet. For now, let the ships rest at anchor, let the lanterns dim, let the city breathe slowly. The sea is holding its breath, and so may you. Welcome back. We are now in part 4. Before the story continues, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into rest. Let the day drift farther away. Let the rhythm of the words carry you without effort. You do not need to imagine everything clearly. Soft impressions are enough, like shapes seen through morning fog. Until now, we have watched Genoa grow outward, from survival to trade to rivalry. Tonight, we turn inward. We step inside the city itself, into the quiet spaces between stone walls, into the daily rhythm of medieval Genoa. Imagine approaching the city from the sea. The harbor appears first. It is wider now than in earlier centuries, protected by natural curves of the coastline and reinforced with stone structures built slowly over time. Ships rest close together, their masts rising like a forest of wood and rope. Sails are folded, oars stacked neatly along the decks. There is movement, but not chaos. Dockworkers unload cargo with practiced motions. Merchants supervise calmly. Voices remain low, even during busy hours. Genoa does not like excess noise. The city values control. As you step off the ship and onto land, the ground beneath your feet feels solid, uneven, ancient. Stone dominates everything. Stone docks, stone warehouses, stone streets climbing upward from the harbor. The city is built vertically, not horizontally. There is no space to spread out, so Genoa builds up. Tall, narrow houses rise close together, their walls touching, their windows small. Sunlight enters the streets only briefly. During the day, slipping between buildings like a quiet visitor, shadows linger. These shadows cool the city during summer, protect it from wind in winter, and create an atmosphere that feels enclosed, secure. Imagine walking through one of these streets. The path twists and narrows unexpectedly. Corners appear suddenly. You can hear footsteps before you see who is coming. This is not accidental. These streets protect the people who live here. Invaders would struggle to move quickly. Strangers would be noticed. Genoa is a city that watches quietly. Inside the houses, life is simple but organized. Families live close together, often sharing buildings with relatives. Lower floors are used for storage or business. Upper floors are for living. Merchants keep their goods near them. Trade and daily life are never far apart. At dawn, the city begins to wake. Church bells ring softly, marking time rather than commanding it. Doors open. Voices greet one another in familiar tones. Markets begin to form near the harbor and along key streets. Imagine stalls arranged carefully, fish laid out on stone slabs, baskets of olives and fruit, cloth folded neatly, colors muted by sea air. Money changes hands quietly. Bargaining exists, but it is controlled. Respect matters. Reputation matters even more. In Genoa, a person's word carries weight. This culture of trust extends beyond trade. Neighbors depend on one another. Families form networks of support. Information travels quickly through whispered conversations. News of distant ports, changing prices, political shifts, all move through the city like an invisible current. Children grow up hearing these conversations. They learn early that the world is larger than the hills behind the city. They learn the names of ports before the names of kings. As the day progresses, the harbor remains the city's heart. Ships arrive and depart according to the wind, not the clock. Timing follows nature. Sailors repair nets, check ropes, clean decks. Their movements are slow, methodical. They conserve energy. They know the sea demands it later. Above the harbor, on higher ground, the city's more powerful families reside. Their homes are still narrow and stone-built, but slightly taller, slightly more fortified. Some begin to resemble small towers. These are not castles. They are symbols of stability. Families here protect not just themselves, but their investments, their records, their influence. Inside these homes, ledgers are kept carefully. Every transaction is noted, every agreement recorded. Genoa trusts memory, but it trusts writing even more as evening approaches. The city changes pace. The market's quiet. Ships settle into stillness. Lanterns appear one by one. Light reflects softly off stone and water. Families gather for simple meals, bread, fish, wine. Conversations slow. Stories are shared, of long voyages, of strange cities, of dangerous waters. These stories are not told for entertainment alone. They are lessons, warnings, preparations for the future. Genoa is a city that teaches itself continuously. Even at rest, as night deepens, the city does not sleep completely. Guards patrol quietly. Dogs bark. Occasionally, the sea remains present, breathing against the shore. From above, the city appears almost still, but beneath the surface, it remains alert. Always. This is life inside medieval Genoa. Not luxurious, not grand, but focused, organized. Prepared. A city shaped by stone and water, by patience and attention, and this daily rhythm, this disciplined calm, is what allows Genoa to survive the growing tensions of the SEAS. Part 4 comes gently to a close. Let your thoughts rest within these narrow streets. Feel the cool stone. Hear the distant water. Sense the quiet strength of a city that knows itself. In the next part, Part 5, we will move deeper into the forces that truly power Genoa. Its merchants, its wealth, and the slow rise of money as a tool of influence. But for now, let the streets empty. Let the lanterns dim. Let the city sleep. Genoa rests, and so may you. Welcome back. This is part 5. If you feel yourself growing heavier, slower, more distant from the day, that is exactly as it should be. Let the story continue without effort. Let it unfold gently, like a long voyage with calm seas. So far, we have watched Genoa grow from stone and water, from narrow streets and quiet harbors, into a city that understands rhythm, discipline, and preparation. Tonight, we move into something less visible, but far more powerful. We move into the world of Genoa's merchants. Not as loud figures, not as rulers, but as the quiet engine beneath everything. Imagine the harbor at early morning. The city is awake, but not rushed. Mist still hangs lightly above the water. Ships are being prepared for departure. Cargo is inspected carefully, not hastily, not casually. Every crate matters. Every weight is measured, because in Genoa, wealth is not displayed. It is managed. The merchants of Genoa are different from many others in medieval Europe. They do not rely on land ownership. They do not depend on harvests or seasons alone. Their wealth moves. It floats on ships. It travels across borders. It changes form. Grain becomes coin. Coin becomes cloth. Cloth becomes contracts. And contracts become influence. Imagine a Genoese merchant inside a stone building near the harbor. The room is quiet. Light enters through a small window. On a wooden table lie ledgers, pages filled with careful handwriting. There are no decorations here, no symbols of luxury. Only records, dates, amounts, names of ports, and partners. This is where Genoese power truly lives, not in castles, not in armies, but in memory, calculation, and trust written in ink. The merchant reads slowly. He remembers journeys that took months. Storms survived. ports negotiated. Every successful voyage strengthens a network that extends far beyond Genoa itself. Across the Mediterranean, Genoese merchants establish relationships. They do not rule these places. They do not occupy them. They settle quietly. They rent warehouses. They build small communities. They integrate just enough to be useful. These outposts become extensions of Genoa. Invisible but effective, information flows back with the ships. Which markets are stable, which rulers are changing, where danger is rising, where opportunity is opening. In Genoa, this information is valued as highly as gold, perhaps even more, because gold can be lost. But knowledge, once shared, multiplies. As wealth accumulates, Genoa begins to do something remarkable for its time. It reinvests. Not only in ships, but in systems. Merchants pool resources to reduce risk. Losses are shared, profits are distributed. This creates stability. A failed voyage does not ruin a family. A storm does not collapse the city. Risk is absorbed collectively. This way of thinking is advanced, even by modern standards, and it allows Genoa to grow while remaining calm. Money, in Genoa, is not emotional. It is practical. Imagine agreements being made in quiet rooms. No dramatic gestures. No raised voices. Just clear terms, clear expectations, and consequences understood by all. This culture of discipline transforms Genoa. Trade increases, confidence grows. The city becomes known not only for its ships, but for its reliability. Kings, bishops, and distant rulers begin to notice. They need money. They need ships. They need connections. And Genoa can provide all three without demanding crowns or titles. Just repayment. Just access. Just influence. Slowly, Genoese merchants begin financing others' ambitions, crusades, wars, political ventures. Not always directly. Sometimes invisibly, gold moves quietly from Genoa to distant lands and returns later multiplied. This creates a new kind of power, power without territory, power without banners, power that cannot be easily attacked. Because you cannot besiege a ledger. You cannot sink a contract. As evening falls over Genoa, merchants return home. Their days are long, but controlled. They do not celebrate excessively. They do not panic easily. They understand cycles. They know that the sea gives and the sea takes. What matters is survival over generations. This mindset shapes the city's future. Children of merchant families grow up surrounded by calculation, by measured speech, by long-term thinking. They learn patience before ambition. They learn caution before risk, and this education prepares Genoa for what lies ahead. Because wealth attracts danger, and influence creates enemies. As Part 5 comes gently to rest. Let your thoughts linger on this quiet power. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. Genoa has learned how to make gold move like water, flowing where it is needed, retreating when danger appears, never staying still long enough to be captured. In the next part, Part 6, we will follow Genoa beyond trade, into a world of faith, conflict, and opportunity. The era of the Crusades, where Genoa's ships and money begin to shape history more openly. But for now, let the ledgers close. Let the harbor grow quiet. Let the city rest in the confidence of careful planning. The sea remains calm, and you may rest with it. Welcome back. This is Part 6. If your body feels heavier now, if your breathing has slowed without you noticing, then you are exactly where you should be. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. Just allow the story to move gently, like a ship carried by a steady night wind. Until now, Genoa has grown quietly, through trade, patience, and discipline. But the world beyond Genoa is changing, and tonight, that changing world begins to pull the city into something larger, something louder, something shaped by faith, fear, and distant lands. This is the age of the Crusades. Imagine Europe at the end of the 11th century. Kingdoms are fragmented, borders are unstable. Faith is powerful, emotional, and deeply personal. Stories spread of sacred lands far to the east, of holy cities, of threats and promises. These stories travel slowly at first, through monasteries, courts, marketplaces, then faster, through sermons, through rumors, through fear. People speak of journeys that must be made, of wars that must be fought, of salvation waiting beyond the horizon. For many, this is a spiritual calling. For Genoa, it is something else as well, an opportunity. Not an opportunity born from greed, but from readiness. Because while others speak of faith, Genoa thinks of ships. The Crusades require movement. Men must be transported, supplies carried, weapons delivered, messages sent. Armies cannot walk to the eastern Mediterranean easily. They must sail, and when rulers and nobles look toward the sea, they see Genoa. Imagine Genoese ships leaving the harbor under pale morning light. They are larger now, stronger, more carefully built. Crews are experienced, routes well known. These ships do not carry only merchants anymore. They carry pilgrims, soldiers, knights wrapped in armor unfamiliar with the sea. Genoese sailors watch them quietly. They know the sea does not care about faith or rank. It respects only preparation. The Crusades changed Genoa's position in the world. Suddenly, the city is no longer just a trader. It becomes a transporter of history. Genoa signs agreements with crusading leaders, ships in exchange for payment, ships in exchange for privileges, ships in exchange for access to ports and trade rights in distant lands. These agreements are carefully written. Every detail matters. Genoa does not fight for belief. It negotiates for position. Imagine a Genoese negotiator meeting a crusader leader. The atmosphere is serious, but calm. The Genoese does not speak of glory. He speaks of logistics, of how many ships are needed, of how long the journey will take, of how much food and water must be carried. This practical mindset impresses leaders who are otherwise surrounded by idealism, and slowly, Genoa becomes indispensable as crusading fleets reach the eastern Mediterranean. Genoese ships do not simply leave. They stay. Warehouses are established near key ports. Trading quarters appear. Genoa does not conquer cities. It embeds itself within them. These Genoese quarters are small at first, but they are protected by agreements. By contracts signed under urgency. And once established, they rarely disappear. Goods begin to flow back west. Spices unfamiliar to European kitchens, silks from distant lands, new forms of wealth. Genoa learns quickly. It adapts trade networks to these new realities. And as faith-driven wars reshape the Mediterranean, Genoa reshapes itself within them. Imagine the harbor of Genoa years later. Ships return from the east bearing scars of long journeys, sails patched, hull scratched, crews quieter. They bring stories, not heroic ones, but practical ones. Which ports are stable, which rulers can be trusted, where danger grows. These stories are recorded, studied, used. The Crusades also bring risk. Genoese ships are sometimes attacked. Routes become dangerous. Politics grow unpredictable. But Genoa has already learned how to survive instability. It diversifies. If one route closes, another opens. If one alliance weakens, another forms. This flexibility keeps the city afloat while others struggled at home. Genoa changes. Wealth from eastern trade flows into the city. New buildings rise. Churches expand. Public spaces grow more elaborate. But still, excess is avoided. Genoa remembers its roots. Stone before ornament. Function before display. Even faith is approached practically. Churches serve spiritual needs, but also act as meeting places, landmarks, and symbols of stability as the Crusades continue over generations. Genoa becomes deeply intertwined with Mediterranean politics. Its ships appear everywhere. Its merchants are recognized. It gains influence not because it commands armies, but because it controls movement. And movement, in this era, is power. Imagine the sea at night during a crusading voyage. Ships move slowly under stars. Torches flicker softly. The water glows faintly where oars disturb it on deck. Sailors speak little. They have seen storms. They have seen battle. They know that history moves slowly, but leaves deep marks. By the end of this era, Genoa is no longer a quiet participant. It is a central player. Still calm, still calculating, but now undeniably powerful. As this long part begins to settle, allow your thoughts to rest on this transformation. Genoa did not change its nature. It simply expanded its reach. It used faith-driven conflict not to dominate, but to connect. And these connections will soon lead Genoa even farther, into distant seas, unfamiliar cultures, and territories beyond the Mediterranean. In the next part 7, we will follow Genoa eastward to the Black Sea, to its colonies, and to some of the most mysterious chapters of its history. But for now, let the ships drift. Let the stars blur softly. Let the sea breathe in the darkness. You may rest. The journey continues. Welcome back. This is part 7. By now, the rhythm of the journey may feel familiar, like the gentle sway of a ship that has been at sea for many nights. There is no need to stay fully awake. There is no need to follow every detail. Just let the story move, slowly, patiently, carrying you farther from shore. Until now, Genoa has mastered the Mediterranean. Its routes are known, its ports familiar, its rivals understood. But power, once established, rarely remains still. And so, quietly, without celebration, Genoa begins to look beyond the sea it knows best, beyond the familiar blue, toward darker waters, toward the Black Sea. Imagine a map drawn on a wooden table. The Mediterranean lies at its center, comfortable, connected. But to the northeast, beyond narrow straits and ancient cities, another sea waits. Larger, colder, less forgiving. The Black Sea reach it. Ships must pass through the Bosphorus, through Constantinople. A city unlike any other, massive walls, golden domes, a constant movement of people, goods, and power. Genoese sailors approach this city with respect. They understand its importance. They understand that access here means access to everything beyond. Through negotiation, patience, and carefully maintained relationships, Genoa secures passage. Not dominance, permission, and permission is enough. Once through the straits, the sea changes. The water feels heavier, the winds less predictable, the coasts unfamiliar. Here, ancient civilizations once thrived. Here, new powers rise and fall, quietly, and Genoa sees opportunity. The Black Sea is rich, grain from vast plains, furs from northern forests, wax, honey, timber, and something else, human movement. Trade routes crossing continents meet here. Goods from Asia, resources from the north, markets hungry in the south. Genoa begins to establish colonies. Not cities in the traditional sense, but fortified trading posts, small at first, carefully placed along the coast. Kaffa, Tana, Sudak. Names that sound distant, almost unreal. These colonies are not meant to replace Genoa. They are extensions, anchors placed far from home. Imagine a Genoese settlement on the Black Sea coast. Stone walls rise beside unfamiliar land, a harbor carved into a rough shoreline. Ships bearing the Red Cross of Genoa anchored quietly. Inside the walls, life feels strangely familiar. Warehouses, ledger rooms, churches. Italian voices mix with foreign languages. This is Genoa's strength. It recreates itself wherever it goes. The colonies operate under Genoese law, Genoese contracts, Genoese systems. They are efficient and they are profitable, but they are also fragile. They exist far from home, surrounded by powerful neighbors, dependent on diplomacy. Genoa understands this risk, and so it does not rule aggressively. It pays. It negotiates. It adapts. Local rulers are respected, tributes are offered, alliances formed. The goal is not control. The goal is continuity. Ships arrive regularly from Genoa. They bring supplies, officials, instructions. They return carrying wealth and information. Always information. But the Black Sea holds dangers unlike the Mediterranean. Storms rise suddenly. Winter freezes harbors. Political alliances shift without warning. And then there is disease that end these distant ports, goods and people from every corner of the known world meet, and sometimes, so do invisible threats. Imagine a Genoese ship leaving Caffa under gray skies. The crew feels uneasy. The air is heavy. Something has changed. They do not know yet that history is about to turn darker, but that story belongs to another part. For now, Genoa continues to expand. Its influence stretches from the Atlantic edge of Europe to the farthest reaches of the Black Sea. Few cities can claim such reach. Fewer still can manage it without armies. This network of colonies makes Genoa extraordinarily wealthy, but wealth brings complexity. Managing distant possessions requires trust and control. Letters travel slowly. Decisions must be made locally. This creates powerful colonial elites, families whose influence rivals those back home. Genoa remains united, but tension grows beneath the surface. Still, for now, the system holds. Imagine a night in one of these colonies. The sea is darker here. The stars sharper. A Genoese merchant looks out over unfamiliar land. He is far from home, but he feels secure, because Genoa is not a place. It is a system, and that system surrounds him. S Part 7 gently comes to rest. Allow yourself to remain in this distant world. A world connected by sails and patience. By contracts and courage. Genoa has reached its farthest edges, but with expansion comes vulnerability. And in the next part, Part 8, we will turn our attention to the ships themselves, to navigation, technology, and the quiet mastery that allows Genoa to survive, where others fail. But for now, let the distant harbors fade into darkness. Let the waves slow. Let the long journey pause. You may rest. The sea is still carrying us forward. Welcome back. This is Part 8. Why now? The journey may feel distant, as if time itself has slowed and softened around you. There is no need to follow every image clearly. Just let the story drift, like a ship guided by wind and stars. Genoa's power, as we have seen, stretches far across the seas. But this reach does not come from numbers alone. It comes from mastery. Tonight, we turn our attention to the heart of that mastery. The ships, the sailors, and the quiet science that allows Genoa to move safely through an uncertain world. Imagine a Genoese ship resting in the harbor before departure. Its hull is made from carefully chosen timber, often oak or pine, cut, dried, and shaped over many months. Every plank has a purpose. Every joint is tested. Genoese shipbuilders are not artists in the romantic sense. They are engineers. Their work is conservative, reliable, proven. Innovation happens slowly here, not through experimentation, but through refinement. What works is kept. What fails is remembered. The result is a ship that feels solid beneath the feet, stable, trustworthy. These ships are built to carry weight, cargo, people, supplies, over long distances. They are not the fastest, but they are resilient, and resilience at sea is survival. Now imagine the crew. These sailors are not adventurers chasing glory. They are professionals. Many come from families who have sailed for generations. They learn young. They begin by observing by tying ropes, by cleaning decks. Over time, they learn the language of the sea, the sound of wind shifting, the behavior of waves, the color of the sky before a storm. This knowledge is not written down at first. It is spoken, passed from mouth to ear, and remembered through repetition. Navigation, for Genoese sailors, is a quiet dialogue with nature. During the day, they watch the sun, its path, its height. They know roughly where they are by the way shadows fall at night. They turn to the stars. The North Star becomes a companion, not worshipped. Trusted. It tells them direction, not destiny. The introduction of the magnetic compass changes everything. Genoa adopts it quickly, not dramatically, quietly. The compass allows sailors to travel when skies are cloudy. When stars are hidden. It extends the sailing season. It reduces uncertainty. But even with this tool, Genoese sailors do not abandon caution. They combine old knowledge with new. They trust instruments, but they trust experience more. Maps improve gradually. Portalon charts appear, showing coastlines, harbors, distances. These maps are guarded carefully. They are expensive to produce and priceless to possess. A Genoese captain does not share his maps freely. They represent years of risk and observation. Imagine a captain in his cabin at night. A small oil lamp flickers. On the table lies a chart. He studies it silently. He traces routes with his finger. He considers winds, currents, political realities. Every voyage is planned like a conversation with uncertainty. And uncertainty is respected. Ships sail when conditions are favorable. Delays are accepted. Rushing is avoided. This patience gives Genoa an advantage over more aggressive rivals. As ships leave the harbor, the city watches. Families gather along the shore. There are no dramatic farewells. Sailors leave often. They will return or they will not. This is understood. The sea is not emotional. It is consistent. Voyages take weeks, sometimes months. Storms test ships and crews. But Genoese vessels are designed to endure. Cargo is secured. Water rationed. Discipline matters. Atc. Hierarchy is clear. Orders are followed calmly. Conflict is minimized. Energy is preserved. When ships finally arrive at distant ports, they arrive intact. Predictable, and predictability builds trust. Other merchants know that Genoese ships deliver. This reliability reinforces Genoa's reputation across continents. Technology, skill, and discipline come together quietly. There is no single invention that creates Genoa's success. It is accumulation. Small improvements, layered over time. As this part slowly comes to rest, allow your thoughts to drift with a ship at night, stars above, water below. The gentle creak of wood, the steady confidence of sailors who know where they are going, not because the sea is safe, but because they are prepared. In the next part, part 9, we will turn inward again, toward Genoa's political system, a republic without kings, governed by families, agreements, and careful balance. But for now, let the ship continue quietly forward. Let the stars blur softly. You may rest. The sea knows the way. Welcome back. This is part 9. If the story now feels like a distant current, if your body rests while your mind drifts in and out of attention, then the rhythm is exactly right. You are not meant to follow sharply. You are meant to float. Until now, we have followed Genoa across seas, through trade, rivalry, faith, and distant colonies. Tonight, we stop sailing. We step onto solid ground. And we look at something unusual for the medieval world. A state without a king. A city ruled not by bloodlines blessed by crowns, but by agreements, families, and balance. This is the political heart of Genoa. Quiet, complex, carefully restrained. Imagine Genoa at dawn. The harbor is calm. Ships remain at anchor. the city has not yet fully awakened. High above the water, stone buildings rise tightly together, their walls touched by the pale morning light. Inside these buildings, power rests. But it does not rest in one room. It is spread, distributed, and that is deliberate. Genoa does not trust concentration. It has seen empires rise and fall. It understands that too much power in one hand creates instability. So it builds something different. The Republic of Genoa emerges slowly, not through revolution, but through habit. Merchant families already manage trade together. They already share risk. They already negotiate collectively. Politics grows naturally from this cooperation. At the center of Genoese governance stands the Doge. But unlike kings elsewhere in Europe, the Doge is not a ruler in the traditional sense. He is a coordinator. A representative, a symbol of unity, not supremacy. Imagine the Doge walking through the city. He is not surrounded by overwhelming ceremony. No royal crown rests on his head. He wears fine clothing, yes, but not extravagant. His power comes not from fear, but from acceptance. He governs only as long as the city allows him to, and everyone knows this. The Doge is chosen from among the elite families, but his authority is limited. Councils surround him. Committees oversee decisions. No single voice dominates. This system moves slowly. Intentionally. In Genoa, speed is dangerous. Decisions are debated, reconsidered, adjusted. This frustrates outsiders, but it protects the city. Imagine a council meeting held in a stone hall. Light filters through narrow windows. Men sit quietly at long tables. There is no shouting. Disagreement is expressed calmly. Because reputation matters. A man who loses control loses trust. And trust, in Genoa, is power. These councils represent families whose wealth floats on the sea. They understand risk. They understand that reckless decisions can destroy trade. So politics becomes an extension of commerce. Measured, cautious, strategic. Conflicts inside Genoa do exist. Rival families compete for influence. Alliances shift, but violence is rare. Open conflict disrupts business, and business sustains the city. When tensions rise, compromises are found. Power is redistributed. Positions rotate. No family is allowed to dominate forever. This balance is fragile, but remarkably resilient. Genoa survives crises that would destroy more centralized states. Because there is no single head to cut off. No palace whose fall ends everything. Imagine news arriving from abroad. A war begins, a route closes. A colony faces danger. The councils respond methodically. Ships are redirected. Investments adjusted. The city bends, but does not break. This political flexibility allows Genoa to operate in a dangerous world. Kings elsewhere rely on armies. Genoa relies on options. It does not commit everything to one path. This frustrates allies and confuses enemies. Genoa rarely declares absolute loyalty. It supports when profitable, withdraws when necessary. This is not betrayal. It is survival. As the centuries pass, this system shapes the character of the city. Citizens do not look to a king for salvation. They look to the city itself, its institutions, its collective memory. Genoa becomes an idea as much as a place, an agreement between families, merchants, sailors, and streets of stone. Imagine Genoa at night. The harbor lights shimmer gently. The city sleeps, but not deeply. Somewhere, records are being written, decisions prepared. Power here never sleeps completely, but it never panics either. As this long part begins to settle, allow your thoughts to rest within this careful balance. A republic without a crown. A city that governs itself through patience. In the next part, Part 10, we will focus on one individual shaped by this world. A man born in Genoa, whose dreams carried him beyond the known seas, Christopher Columbus. But for now, let the councils fall silent. Let the stone halls grow dark. Let the city rest in its quiet control. You may rest as well, the balance holds. Welcome back. This is part 10.by now. The journey may no longer feel like a story with a beginning and an end. It may feel more like a slow tide, moving in and out, sometimes close, sometimes distant. That is exactly how it should be. Tonight, we focus on one individual, not because he stands above Genoa, but because he is shaped by it. A man born beside the same harbor we have been returning to again and again. Christopher Columbus. But before we speak of voyages and oceans, we begin where Genoa always begins. At the water's edge. Imagine Genoa in the mid-15th century. The city is mature now. Its streets are crowded. Its harbor busy. Ships arrive from every direction. The air smells of salt, tar, and foreign goods. Languages overlap in the narrow streets. This is the world into which Columbus is born. Not into royalty, not into wealth, but into possibility. As a child, he grows up hearing the harbor before he sees it. The sound of ropes tightening, the creak of hulls, the distant calls of sailors. For a Genoese child, the sea is not mysterious. It is familiar. It is dangerous, yes, but also practical. Columbus learns early that ships leave and sometimes return. This uncertainty becomes normal. He listens to stories without romance. Stories of storms, out of missed ports, of unexpected landfalls. These stories do not inspire fear. They inspire curiosity. Genoa does not teach children to dream wildly. It teaches them to calculate. Columbus learns maps before myths, distances before legends. He learns that the world is large but measurable. Imagine the young Columbus walking along the docks. He watches sailors from distant ports. He listens quietly. He learns accents, customs, routes. This education does not come from books alone. It comes from presence. From standing in a place where the world passes through daily. As he grows older, Columbus goes to sea. Not as an explorer, as a worker. He sails known routes. He learns winds and currents. He experiences long days of routine, long nights of quiet thought. Etc. Imagination has space. Stars appear more clearly. Horizons feel wider. It is here that questions begin to form. Not emotional questions. Practical ones. If ships can sail east, how far can they sail west? If distances can be calculated, what lies beyond known limits? These questions are not unique. Others ask them too. But Columbus is shaped by Genoa's mindset. He does not abandon caution. He combines curiosity with calculation. He studies maps. He reads what knowledge is available. He listens to sailors. Rumors, not as truth, but as data. Genoa has prepared him well for this. Because Genoa respects ambition. Only when it is supported by planning, Columbus seeks backing for his ideas. And here, Genoa's character becomes clear. The city does not rush to support him. It listens. It evaluates. It hesitates. His plan seems risky, uncertain, too many variables. Genoa has wealth, yes, but it does not gamble recklessly. This refusal is not rejection of exploration. It is caution. And caution sends Columbus elsewhere. He leaves Genoa not because it lacks vision, but because it demands certainty. Still, even as he travels to foreign courts, seeking support from Spain and others, he carries Genoa with him. How he speaks. How he negotiates. How he frames his arguments. He promises routes, not miracles, prophets, not glory. Eventually, support is found, ships are prepared, and the voyage begins. But this story is not about discovery. It is about origin. Because Columbus does not represent a break from Genoa. He represents its extension. He embodies the Genoese belief that the sea is a path, not a boundary. When his ships finally return, the world changes, trade routes shift, power redistributes, and Genoa, once again, adapts. It finances. It negotiates. It embeds itself into this new reality quietly. Columbus becomes famous. Genoa remains itself. This contrast is important. Genoa does not need heroes. IT produces systems. IT produces sailors, merchants, thinkers. Individuals pass through history. The city endures. S this long. Part begins to settle. Allow your thoughts to rest on this idea that great journeys often begin not with dreams, but with environments that allow dreams to form carefully. Genoa gave Columbus the sea. But more importantly, it gave him a way of thinking, measured, persistent, unafraid of distance. In the next part, Part 11, we will return to Genoa itself, to its greatest and longest rivalry. Venice. Two cities. 1 sea. Endless tension. But for now, let the harbor fade softly into night. Let the stars blur. You may rest. The voyage continues. Welcome back. Before anything else, allow the world to soften again. Let the edges of your thoughts blur slightly. There is no need to prepare for anything. Nothing is expected of you. This story moves at its own pace, like a tide that has learned patience over centuries. Tonight, the sea feels familiar. You have traveled it many times now. You know its moods, its silences, but something has changed. The Mediterranean is no longer empty. It is no longer neutral. It is shared. And shared spaces, even the calmest ones, rarely remain peaceful forever. Somewhere across the water, another city is watching. Venice. Imagine Venice at dawn. Water everywhere. Buildings rising directly from the Eno hills, Eno stone pressing inward. Just canals, reflections, movement. Where Genoa is narrow and vertical, Venice is open and fluid. Where Genoa clings to rock, Venice floats. From the beginning, these two cities are different in spirit. Genoa learns discipline from limitation. Venice learns confidence from openness, and yet they are drawn to the same thing, the sea. For a long time, Genoa and Venice exist beside one another without open hostility. They trade, they observe, they compare. Each city understands the other instinctively. They recognize a rival not through hatred, but through similarity. Both depend on ships. Both depend on routes. Both understand that control of movement means control of wealth. At first, the tension is subtle. A Venetian ship arrives where a Genoese one once dominated. A contract shifts hands. Port favors one city slightly more than the other. No conflict is announced. But memory is long. In Genoa, merchants notice patterns. Venice is expanding eastward, securing privileges, building relationships. In Venice, officials notice the same. Genoa is everywhere, quiet, persistent. The sea between them becomes crowded with intention. Imagine a Genoese merchant arriving at a Levantine port at sunset. He has been here many times before. He knows the harbor. The dockworkers recognize his ship. But this time, something is different. Venetian flags hang nearby. Venetian warehouses stand closer to the water. Prices are tighter, negotiations slower. The merchant says little. He observes. Back in Genoa, these observations accumulate, not as complaints, as calculations. Genoa does not rush to confront Venice. It studies it. Venice is centralized, its government more unified, its decisions faster. This gives Venice advantages, but also risks. Genoa sees this clearly. Speed can win opportunities, but it can also overextend. So Genoa remains patient. But patience does not mean passivity. Slowly, alliances shift. Genoa strengthens its presence where Venice is weaker. In the Western Mediterranean, in the Black Sea. Venice dominates some routes. Genoa dominates others. For a time, balance holds. But balance is temporary. Imagine the Mediterranean as night falls. Ships from both cities move silently under the same stars. They pass one another without words. Crews exchange glances. Nothing more. The sea absorbs the tension. Quietly, but beneath the surface, currents pull in opposite directions. As decades pass, rivalry hardens. ports begin to choose sides. Agreements become exclusive. Access is restricted. Genoa understands the danger of this. Trade thrives on openness. Exclusivity creates friction. But Venice pushes forward, confident, organized, determined. Genoa responds not with force, but with resilience. It deepens relationships rather than expanding recklessly. It strengthens families rather than empowering individuals. It spreads risk. Venice builds a visible empire. Genoa builds an invisible one. This difference defines their conflict. Venice prefers control. Genoa prefers influence. Neither approach is superior. Both are dangerous at times. This rivalry turns violent. Naval clashes erupt. Ships are seized. Routes disrupted. But even in war, Genoa remains restrained. It fights to protect trade, not to annihilate Venice. Because Genoa understands something deeply. The sea punishes excess. Venice, too, learns this lesson. Sometimes painfully, wars exhaust both sides. Losses mount, and eventually, exhaustion forces pauses. These pauses are not peace. They are breaths. Moments to reassess. During these moments, Genoa often recovers faster. Its decentralized structure absorbs shock. Its merchants adapt. Venice, more unified, feels victories and losses more intensely. This long rivalry shapes both cities. It sharpens Genoa's caution. It sharpens Venice's ambition. Neither city can ignore the other. They define themselves in contrast. Imagine a Genoese council meeting late at night. Venice is discussed quietly. Not as an enemy, as a constant. Something to be considered in every decision. Where Venice moves, Genoa adjusts. Where Genoa resists, Venice tests. This dance continues for generations. It becomes tradition. And tradition becomes identity. As the centuries move forward, new powers rise around them. Empires grow. Kings consolidate. The sea becomes more crowded. And slowly, subtly, the rivalry between Genoa and Venice begins to lose its absolute importance. Not because it ends, but because the world grows larger. Still, its legacy remains. It teaches Genoa caution without fear. It teaches patience without weakness. It reinforces the idea that survival lies not in domination, but in balance. As this long passage begins to settle, allow yourself to rest in this quiet tension. Point 2 cities. Point 1c. Neither victorious, neither defeated. Both shaped forever by watching the other across the water. In the next part we will move into darker territory, into crisis, disease, and disruption, when forces beyond trade and politics shake Genoa deeply. But for now, let the sea smooth itself again. Let the ships drift farther apart. Let the rivalry dissolve into distant memory. You may rest. The water remembers everything, so you do not have to. Welcome back. There is a different stillness now. Not the calm of open water, but the quiet that comes before something heavy. If your breathing feels slower, if your thoughts feel further away, that is good. This part of the journey moves gently, but it moves through shadow. Until now, Genoa has faced rivals, storms, and uncertainty. All of these could be negotiated with, planned for, adapted to. But there are moments in history when preparation is not enough. Moments when the sea brings something. Unseen, imagine the harbor again. The ships are familiar, the sails worn, the crews experienced. They arrive from the east, from the Black Sea, from distant ports that now feel uncomfortably close. The voyage has been long. The sailors look tired, not from storms, but from something harder to name. Crates are unloaded, ropes untied. Everything looks normal, and yet, something is wrong. Genoa does not notice it immediately. How could it? The city has always trusted the sea. It has always welcomed returning ships, but this time, the ships carry more than goods. They carry silence. First, It is only whispers. A sailor who collapses after reaching land, a dock worker who does not return home, a merchant who suddenly falls ill. These things happen. Life in a port city is fragile and no one panics. Not yet. But then the pattern grows. Fever, weakness, dark marks on the skin. The illness moves faster than information. By the time Genoa understands what is happening, it is already inside the city. The plague. Imagine Genoa as the days pass. The narrow streets that once felt protective now feel close, too close. Stone walls trap not only warmth, but fear. Markets quiet, voices lower. Church bells ring more often now, not to mark time, but to mark loss. The sea, once a source of life, now feels dangerous. Ships are watched with suspicion. Foreign sailors avoided. But Genoa cannot close itself completely. It is a city built on movement. And movement does not stop easily. The plague does not respect wealth. Merchant families fall. Ill, sailors die beside nobles. Priests pray until they collapsed. Genoa's systems, so effective against rivals and wars, struggle here. There is no negotiation with disease, no contract, no map. Imagine a Genoese household at night. Lantern light flickers weakly. Someone breathes heavily in the corner. Others sit silently, afraid to speak, afraid to touch. Outside, the city is quieter than ever before. No arguments, no bargaining. Just absence. The plague changes time itself. Days blur together, weeks lose. Meaning, the harbor empties, ships remain at anchor, crews unwilling to disembark or unable to leave, trade slows. Gold stops moving. For Genoa, this is terrifying. Not because of greed, but because stillness is dangerous. Yet even in this darkness, the city does not collapse. Something remarkable happens. Genoa adapts again. Slowly, painfully. Authorities attempt quarantines. Ships are isolated. Areas of the city sealed. These measures are imperfect, sometimes cruel, often ineffective. But they are attempts. And attempts matter. The plague eventually loosens its grip. Not because it is defeated, but because it exhausts itself. Those who remain alive emerge changed. The city feels older, quieter, wiser. Many families are gone. Others weakened. Power shifts subtly. Vacancies appear. In councils, in trade networks, in leadership. Genoa does not rush to fill them. It mourns briefly, then it reorganizes. This ability to continue after catastrophe is one of Genoa's deepest strengths. The sea returns to motion. Ships sail. Again. Routes reopen cautiously. But something has been lost. Innocence, perhaps or certainty. Genoa understands now that not all threats come from rivals. Some arrive silently, hidden in the rhythm of trade itself. This realization changes the city. It becomes more inward-looking, more cautious, less eager to expand blindly. But it does not retreat. It never does. This long passage begins to soften. Let your thoughts rest in this altered Genoa. A city scarred, but still standing. Stone walls remain. The harbor breathes again. Life continues. In the next part, we will see how Genoa transforms suffering into structure. How money, banks, and institutions rise quietly from crisis. But for now, let the streets empty. Let the bells fall silent. Let the sea calm once more. You may rest. Even after darkness, the tide still returns. Welcome back. There is a different kind of quiet now. Not the heavy silence of loss, but the softer stillness that follows survival. If your thoughts feel distant, if your body feels settled, let it be that way. This part of the story does not rush. It rebuilds slowly, carefully. After the plague, Genoa is no longer the same city. The streets are familiar, the harbor still breathes with the tide, but something invisible has shifted. The city has learned a painful lesson. Trade alone is not enough. ships alone, are not enough. Wealth must be protected not just from rivals, but from chaos itself, and so, from loss and uncertainty, Genoa begins to shape one of its most enduring creations, not a fleet, not a colony, but an institution. Imagine Genoa in the years after the Great Crisis. The population is smaller, families have merged or disappeared. Old rivalries feel quieter now, as if grief has softened them. But trade is returning, slowly at first, cautiously. Merchants meet again in stone rooms near the harbor. Ledgers reopen. Ink touches paper, and with each transaction, a familiar problem reappears: risk. The sea remains unpredictable. Politics remain unstable. Disease, war, and loss are no longer abstract threats. They are remembered. Genoa understands that to survive the future, it must organize uncertainty itself. And so, quietly, the idea of a public bank takes form. Not a bank as we imagine today. Something older, stronger, more deeply woven into the city. The Bank of St. George. Imagine a building near the heart of Genoa. Solid, unadorned, stone walls built not to impress, but to endure. Inside, there is no noise and no crowds. Only careful voices, measured steps, and the slow turning of pages. This bank is not created for individuals. It is created for the city. Its purpose is simple and revolutionary. To manage Genoa's debt. To stabilize its finances. To separate emotion from money. Public obligations are consolidated. Loans are structured. Payments scheduled. The chaos of crisis is transformed into order. For Genoa, this is not just financial innovation. It is survival strategy. The Bank of St. George becomes something unusual. It does not merely hold money. It governs it. Taxes are assigned to it. Revenues flow through it. Debts are administered by it. In some cases, entire territories are managed on its behalf. The bank begins to resemble a state within the state. But unlike a ruler, it has no ambition, only balance. Imagine officials working late into the evening. They do not wear armor. They do not command soldiers. Their power lies in calculation. They decide which debts can wait, which must be paid, which risks can be taken, and which cannot. This calm authority changes Genoa deeply. The city becomes more stable than its rivals expect. Wars may disrupt trade. Empires may rise and fall. But Genoa's finances continue, quietly, predictably. Foreign rulers notice. They borrow from Genoa. They negotiate with Genoa. Not because of fear, but because of reliability. Trust, once again, becomes power. Imagine a foreign ambassador. Entering Genoa that he expects ceremony, he finds none. Instead, he is led to rooms filled with records, accounts, agreements, obligations. Genoa does not impress with spectacle. It convinces with structure. This system also changes the relationship between citizens and the state. People do not rely on a king's mood. They rely on institutions, rules, procedures. This creates a different kind of loyalty, not emotional, practical. Genoa becomes less dramatic and more resilient as decades pass. The Bank of St. George outlives generations. Families rise and fall. Doge after doge passes through office. The bank remains, steady, a quiet anchor in a changing world. Imagine the harbor again, years later. Ships come and go. Trade continues, but beneath everything, beneath every voyage, every contract, every risk, there is confidence. Not confidence in luck, confidence in systems. As this long passage begins to soften, let your thoughts rest in this ordered calm. A city that has learned to turn suffering into structure. To transform uncertainty into calculation. In the next part, we will watch Genoa begin to feel the weight of time itself. As new empires rise, new routes open, and the old maritime world slowly shifts away from the Mediterranean. But for now, let the ledgers close gently, let the stone halls grow quiet, let the city rest in its careful balance. You may rest as well. The numbers are watched, the risks are measured. The night is calm. Welcome back this time. Allow yourself to settle even more deeply. There is no urgency left in the story now. Only time, long, slow time. Genoa has survived rivals, disease, and uncertainty. That IT has learned how to protect itself not only with ships, but with ideas, institutions, and patience. Yet history does not pause out of respect. Even the most stable systems eventually feel the weight of change. And change is approaching from far beyond the horizon. Imagine the Mediterranean again. IT is still busy, still alive, but something subtle has shifted. The sea no longer feels like the center of the world. For centuries, Genoa believed, correctly, that whoever controlled these waters controlled history itself. But now, new winds are blowing. Literally, ships return with unfamiliar stories. They speak of oceans without visible shores. Of currents stronger than anything known before. Of voyages that last months, not weeks. These stories feel distant at first. Interesting, but not urgent. Genoa listens. Politely. It always does. But deep within its councils and counting houses, a quiet question forms. What if the world is becoming larger than the Mediterranean can contain? At first, Genoa responds as it always has. It adapts. Investments shift slightly, partnerships extend outward. Genoese bankers finance foreign crowns. Genoese sailors serve on non-Genoese ships. The city embeds itself into the new age quietly, without spectacle. This has always been its strength. But there is a difference now. The new routes do not return, they bypass. The Atlantic begins to pull wealth away from the familiar ports. Lisbon grows louder. Seville becomes crowded. Later, Amsterdam and London will rise. The Mediterranean does not empty, but it becomes secondary. For Genoa, this is not a sudden collapse. It is a slow realization. Imagine a Genoese merchant reviewing his accounts late at night. The numbers still work. Profits still exist. But growth feels constrained. Opportunities feel fewer. The margins are thinner. This is not failure. It is aging. Genoa has reached maturity in a world that is now fascinated with youth. The city does not panic. It never has. Instead, it leans further into what it knows best: finance, credit, influence without visibility. While other cities race ships across oceans, Genoa funds them. Loans flow outward. Interest flows back. Genoese capital moves invisible through foreign empires. Kings wage wars with Genoese money. Explorers sail with Genoese backing. The city itself grows quieter, less dramatic, but no, less important. This creates a strange paradox. Genoa is everywhere and nowhere. Its name appears less in heroic stories, less in maps, but it appears constantly in ledgers. In contracts, in obligations that stretch across continents. Imagine the Bank of St. George now. Older, more experienced. Its walls have seen generations pass. It manages not just Genoa's finances, but fragments of global power. Entire states owe it money. Entire campaigns depend on its credit. And yet, the city remains small, tightly packed, almost modest. This contrast becomes Genoa's final identity. Not a conquering empire, not a fading ruin, but a quiet architect behind the scenes. As time moves forward, political pressures increase. Foreign powers interfere. Internal factions strain. Eventually, independence weakens. Genoa's political autonomy erodes gradually, absorbed into larger forces. But even then, its legacy does not disappear. Because legacy is not territory. It is method. Modern banking, risk management, public debt systems. These ideas survive far beyond Genoa itself. Imagine walking through the city centuries later. The harbor is still there. The stone streets still narrow, tourists pass without realizing what once moved through these walls. They see beauty. They do not see influence. But influence rarely leaves monuments. It leaves habits, structures, ways of thinking that become normal long after their creators are forgotten. This long part begins to soften. Let that thought rest with you. That not all power shouts, some power whispers and lasts longer. In the next part, we will move toward the final phase of Genoa's story, decline without collapse, ending without destruction. But for now, let the city slow completely. Let the centuries pass quietly. Let the sea breathe without ambition. You may rest. Genoa has learned how to endure time itself. Welcome back. If you are listening now, there is no need to follow every sentence. This part is meant to stretch, to slow the sense of time itself. Let the story unfold like a long evening that does not ask anything from you. Genoa is older now. Not ruined. Not defeated, simply aged. The kind of age that comes after centuries of movement, after decisions layered upon decisions, after the sea has given everything it was going to give. The harbor still exists, of course. It always will. Ships still arrive. Sails still appear on the horizon. But the urgency is gone. The Mediterranean no longer feels like the center of gravity. It feels like a memory that continues to function. Genoa understands this before many others do. It feels the shift not as a single event, but as a gradual loosening. Trade routes stretch farther away. Information arrives later. Opportunities feel more distant. Imagine a Genoese merchant walking through the city at dusk. He passes the same stone buildings his ancestors passed. The same narrow streets. Everything looks unchanged, and yet he knows the world outside these walls is moving in directions he will never fully see. This realization does not create panic. It creates restraint. Genoa has always been careful with decline. It does not collapse dramatically. It does not burn itself out trying to compete with youth. Instead, it contracts gently. It chooses stability over expansion, preservation over glory. This is not weakness. It is acceptance. The city continues to lend money to manage. To provide financial expertise to larger, louder powers. Spain rises. France asserts itself. Empires grow heavy with territory. Genoa watches them all and finances many of them. This creates a strange distance. Genoa is no longer fully in control of its political destiny, but it remains deeply embedded in the machinery of power. Kings may command armies, but armies require funding, and funding often passes through Genoese hands. Imagine negotiations taking place far from Genoa in royal courts in foreign capitals. Genoese representatives sit quietly at tables. They speak calmly. They promise little. They understand that influence does not need banners. It needs continuity. But time presses inward as well as outward. Internal tensions increase. Factions within the city disagree on direction. Some want renewal. Some want resistance. Some want withdrawal. These debates are quieter than in the past. Less idealistic. More tired. Genoa's institutions still function, but they no longer feel inevitable. Foreign powers intervene more openly. Protections are offered with conditions. Autonomy fades not in a single moment, but in increments. Each concession feels manageable. Each compromise feels temporary. Until one day, independence feels historical rather than practical, and still, the city remains. Imagine Genoa under foreign influence. Flags change. Administrations adjust, but daily life continues. Merchants still trade. Records are still kept. Ships still dock. Genoa has always understood something fundamental. Survival does not require sovereignty in the way pride imagines it does. It requires relevance, and relevance can exist quietly. As centuries move forward, the Republic becomes memory. Its institutions transform or dissolve. Its political identity softens, but its methods do not vanish. They spread. Ideas born in Genoa become common practice elsewhere. Public debt managed systematically. Banking separated from emotion. Risk distributed rather than concentrated. These are no longer Genoese ideas. They are simply normal. And that may be Genoa's greatest success. Tio shaped the world so thoroughly that its influence becomes invisible. Imagine walking through Genoa much later. The sea still glimmers. Tourists admire architecture. They take photographs. They see beauty. They feel atmosphere. They do not feel power, because power has already moved on into systems they live inside every day without thinking about where they came from. The city does not mind. It has never demanded recognition. It has always preferred function over fame. As this long passage continues to slow, let yourself drift with it. There is no climax here. No dramatic ending. Only continuity. Genoa does not end with fire or conquest. It ends with absorption, with ideas dissolving into the larger world, with identity becoming influence, and influence becoming habit. In the next part, we will move into the final reflections, not what Genoa lost, but what it left behind. Not ruins, but foundations. But for now, let the city fade gently into evening. Let the harbor lights soften. Let centuries pass without effort. You do not need to remember anything. The city has already remembered for you. Rest. The sea is calm. Welcome back. There is a particular kind of calm that only arrives at the very end of long stories. Not the calm of resolution, but the calm of understanding. You have traveled with this city for a long time now, across centuries, across seas, across ideas that slowly replaced one another, so there is no need to hurry. Let the story stretch out, wide and unbroken, like the surface of the sea at night. Genoa no longer measures time the way it once did. There was a time when days were counted in tides, weeks, in departures and arrivals, years in profits and losses. That rhythm has softened. The city still exists, still breathes, still watches the water, but it watches without expectation. Imagine Genoa in its later centuries. The harbor is quieter now, not empty, just gentler. Ships arrive that are larger than the old galleys, designed for oceans. Genoa rarely sails anymore. They dock briefly, they unload, they leave. Genoa no longer asks where they are going. It already knows. The Atlantic has claimed the future, and Genoa has accepted that truth without resentment. This acceptance is important. Many powers fall because they refuse to recognize that the world has changed. Genoa survives because it does recognize it. It understands something subtle about history. Being central is temporary. Being useful can last longer. So the city adjusts its posture. It becomes a place of expertise rather than ambition. A place where money is understood deeply, where risk is respected, where agreements are honored quietly. This is not exciting. It is durable. Imagine an aging Genoese banker reviewing documents. The handwriting varies across generations. Some ink is faded, some paper brittle, but the logic remains consistent. Balance, caution, continuity. He does not think of himself as powerful. He thinks of himself as responsible. This mindset has always defined Genoa more than conquest ever did. Even as political control slips away, this mentality persists. Foreign rulers may govern the city, but they rarely dismantle its systems. Because those systems work, they generate stability, they generate trust, and trust is something every ruler needs, whether they admit it or not. Over time, Genoa becomes layered with memory. Not loud memory, quiet memory. Every stone street holds traces of arguments long resolved. Every harbor wall remembers ships that changed the world indirectly. The city becomes reflective. It looks inward more than outward. This inward gaze produces culture, art, architecture, religion shaped by restraint rather than spectacle. Genoa's churches are solemn, not overwhelming, its palace is impressive, but enclosed, they reflect a people who value protection over display. Imagine walking through Genoa at night now. The streets are narrow, lights are low. The sea is close, but no longer dominant. It is a presence, not a command. The city feels self-contained, as if it has folded its history inward and carries it quietly. This is what remains when ambition recedes, not emptiness, density. Genoa's legacy does not shout from textbooks. It hums beneath modern life. Every time a government manages debt rather than defaulting. Every time risk is shared instead of centralized. Every time finance is separated from emotion. These are Genoese habits, even if the name is forgotten. And perhaps that is fitting. Genoa never wanted monuments to itself. It wanted function. Effect. Continuation. In many ways, Genoa is more alive now as an idea than it ever was as a state. Its physical power declined. Its conceptual power spread. That is a rare outcome in history. Most powers vanish entirely. Genoa dissolves gently into the world. Imagine the sea one last time. Not as a battlefield, not as a trade route, but as a mirror. The surface reflects stars that no longer guide navigation, but still inspire quiet thought. Genoa stands behind you now, no longer demanding attention. It has given what it needed to give. And it rests. This long passage stretches towards stillness. Allow yourself to rest as well. There is nothing left to analyze, nothing left to anticipate. Only the sense that some histories do not end with collapse or triumph. They end with influence becoming invisible, with power becoming habit, with survival becoming calm. In the next and final part, we will not tell another story. We will simply sit with what remains, the feeling of a city that understood time better than most. But for now, let the harbor fall completely silent. Let the water smooth itself. Let the centuries fade without effort. You are safe here. The story is holding itself. Now, sleep. The sea has nothing more to ask of you. Welcome back. There is no beginning now. No clear opening. The story simply continues, as stories do when they have been told for a very long time. Genoa no longer announces itself to the world. It does not need to. It exists the way old cities exist. Not through ambition, but through presence. Imagine standing above the harbor in these later centuries. Not during a festival. Not during war. On an ordinary day. The water moves slowly. The sound of waves touches stone without effort. Ships arrive, but they are not the ships of old Genoa. They are taller, heavier, designed for distances this city once helped imagine, but no longer needs to travel itself. Genoa watches them without envy. It has already lived that chapter. Once, everything here depended on speed, on who reached the port first, on who signed the contract sooner. Now, speed feels unnecessary. Time has thickened. The city feels dense with memory, as if centuries have settled into the stone itself. Walk through the streets and you feel it, not as nostalgia, as gravity. Every narrow passage once echoed with negotiation. Every corner once carried voices calculating risk. Those voices are gone, but their discipline remains. Genoa has become a city of habits, quiet habits. Merchants still meet, though their influence is smaller. Bankers still keep records, though the sums feel abstract now. Administration continues, because administration is what Genoa understands best. The city has always trusted systems more than individuals. That does not change with age. Political independence fades further. Foreign powers reshape borders. Treaties redraw authority. But Genoa adapts without resistance. It does not cling to sovereignty the way younger states do. It understands something uncomfortable but true. Control is temporary. Continuity is not. As long as daily life continues, as long as contracts are honored, as long as trust exists, the city remains itself. Imagine a Genoese family several generations after the Republic. They do not speak of empire. They do not speak of conquest. They speak of reliability, of steady work, of measured decisions. Children grow up learning restraint as naturally as others learn ambition. This shapes character. Genoa produces people who do not rush, who do not exaggerate, who understand that survival is often invisible. The sea still plays a role, but no longer commands attention. It is background now. A presence that reminds the city of what it once was, without demanding it be repeated. There is peace in this. A different kind of success. Many great powers end loudly. They collapse. They fracture. They are remembered through ruins. Genoa avoids this fate. It fades softly. Its structures dissolve into larger systems. Its ideas become common sense. This is the most complete form of influence. To shape the world so thoroughly that no one remembers where the shape came from. Modern finance carries Genoa within it. Public debt management, risk distribution, institutional trust. These are Genoese inventions that no longer carry a Genoese name, and that is appropriate. The city never sought recognition, only function. Imagine the Bank of St. George one last time. Older than anyone inside it. Calmer than any government above it. It represents the final form of Genoa's philosophy. Emotion restrained, risk calculated, time respected. Even when political authority disappears, this way of thinking survives. Because it works. Genoa's story teaches something rare. That endurance does not require dominance. That survival does not require spectacle. That influence can be quiet and therefore long-lasting. Now imagine the city at night. Not romanticized, simply real. Lights glow softly in windows. The harbor reflects them imperfectly. There is no urgency and no sense of loss. Only completion. Genoa has finished what it came to do. Not by conquering the world, but by teaching it how to manage itself. As this long passage settles deeper, there is nothing left to anticipate. No next battle, no final collapse. Only continuation. The city remains, as cities do, after history moves on. It becomes a place rather than a power. And that is not failure. That is rest. Let the streets empty slowly. Let the water keep moving without purpose. Let the centuries pass without resistance. You do not need to remember the details. Genoa has already folded them into the world around you. Sleep. The story is no longer moving forward. It is simply there. Welcome back. At this point, the story is no longer moving forward in time. It is widening. Like a calm sea that no longer pushes toward the horizon, but spreads evenly in every direction. Genoa exists here. Not as an event, not as a power, but as a state of being. Imagine the city without looking for history, no dates, no famous names, no remembered victories. Just a place where people wake up, open their windows, and hear the water. This is what remains after centuries of importance. Ordinary life. And ordinary life, sustained for a very long time, is one of the hardest achievements in history. Genoa's streets are still narrow. They were built that way deliberately, long before anyone thought about comfort. Narrow streets protect from wind, from heat, from invasion. They force closeness. They slow movement. Even now, they shape behavior. People walk carefully. They listen. They yield space. The city teaches restraint without saying a word. This restraint has always been Genoa's language. Even at the height of its power, it never expanded loudly. It never announced destiny. It negotiated, calculated, waited. And now, in this later age, those habits feel almost philosophical. Genoa no longer competes with the world. It observes it. Empires come and go beyond the hills. Flags change. Borders shift. The city adapts to each change quietly, adjusting administration, adjusting allegiance, adjusting expectations. There is no drama in this, just continuity. Imagine an old ledger discovered in a Genoese archive. Its pages are yellowed, the ink faded, Names appear that mean nothing now. Numbers that once represented fortunes. And yet, the structure is immediately recognizable. Credits, debits, risk. This is the strange thing about Genoa's legacy. Its content ages. Its structure does not. That structure is now embedded everywhere. In modern governments, in international institutions, in systems that manage uncertainty on a global scale. Genoa no longer needs to be remembered because it is being practiced. Every day. This kind of influence is invisible, and invisibility is safe. Cities that demand remembrance are often broken by it. Genoa asked only to function, and so it continues to function even after its political form dissolves. Imagine the harbor again, but do not imagine ships leaving. Imagine ships staying. Maintain. Dock. At rest. The sea is no longer a challenge. It is a companion. This relationship between the city and the water has changed. Once, the sea promised opportunity. Later, it threatened disease and rivalry. Now, it offers rhythm. Waves mark time more gently than bells ever did. Genoa has learned to live at this pace. The city is no longer young enough to chase futures, but old enough to understand them. It knows that power concentrates, then disperses, that routes shift, that centers move. It does not resist this cycle. It trusts it, because trust in cycles is what allowed Genoa to survive them. Think about how rare that is. Most societies are built on urgency, on growth, on fear of falling behind. Genoa, after centuries of relevance, learns how to fall behind gracefully, and in doing so, it avoids collapse. The city becomes something closer to wisdom than ambition. This wisdom is quiet. It does not teach through slogans. It teaches through absence of panic, through measured response, through acceptance of limits. Imagine a Genoese elder speaking to a child. There is no story of glory and no instruction to conquer. There is advice instead: be careful, be reliable, do not risk everything at once. This is the city, speaking through generations, not exciting advice, but advice that lasts. As night falls, Genoa becomes softer, lights reflect unevenly on stone and water, sounds fade quickly in narrow streets. The city does not glow. It settles, and in that settling, you can feel the long arc of its history slowing to stillness, not ending stillness. That is the distinction. Genoa does not conclude. It stabilizes. Its role in the world becomes constant rather than central. And constant things are often unnoticed, but they hold everything else together. This is Genoa's final transformation, from actordo structure, from ambitionto background, from sterito system. As this long passage stretches further, there is no new theme to introduce. Only the deepening of what is already here. A city that understood trade, then rivalry, then loss, then finance, then time itself. Few places ever reach that final understanding, and fewer still survive it. Now, allow the story to loosen its grip completely. There is no need to listen closely anymore. The city will remain whether you follow it or not. Its work is already done. Let the harbor remain calm. Let the streets remain narrow. Let the sea breathe without demand. You are not missing anything. Nothing important is happening now, and that, for Genoa, is the greatest success of all: rest. The city is no longer moving. It is simply here. Welcome back. Now the story becomes even slower. So slow that it almost stops being a story at all. It becomes atmosphere. Genoa is no longer moving through history. History is moving around Genoa. This is an important distinction. Imagine the city in a time when maps are already full, when there are no white spaces left to explore, when the world has been measured, named, divided. Genoa watches this with calm familiarity. It remembers when the world felt unfinished, when the sea promised unknown answers. Now the sea promises routine, ferries, cargo schedules, predictable routes, and this predictability does not disappoint the city. It reassures it, because Genoa has always preferred certainty over spectacle. Walk slowly through the city in this late age. Not as a visitor, as someone who belongs. You notice how little space there is for drama. Buildings lean inward, streets curve unexpectedly. There are no wide avenues meant for parades, and no grand open squares designed to impress. Everything feels compressed, protected. This was never an accident. Genoa was designed by people who feared exposure. Exposure to enemies, exposure to risk, exposure to excess. Even now, centuries later, the city teaches this instinctively. People lower their voices. They move carefully. They avoid exaggeration. The city rewards moderation. It always has. This is why Genoa never produced a cult of personality. No kings remembered forever. No emperors carved into stone. Its heroes were systems, agreements that held, banks that endured, contracts that survived political collapse. These things are not celebrated. They are relied upon. Imagine a small office overlooking the harbor. Not grand, just functional. Inside, documents are reviewed. Not historic documents, current ones, loans, budgets, maintenance costs. This is the modern face of Genoa. Not commanding fleets, maintaining balance, and balance, once achieved, requires constant attention. The city has learned that stability is not passive. It must be maintained every day through small decisions, careful planning, unemotional judgment. This is tiring work, and Genoa is good at tiring work because it does not seek excitement. It seeks continuation. Think about how unusual this is in human history. Most civilizations chase meaning through expansion, through growth, through louder and louder declarations of importance. Genoa does the opposite. It shrinks its ambitions deliberately, and in doing so, it becomes harder to destroy. Empires cannot conquer something that is not competing with them. They can only absorb it, and absorption, in Genoa's case, changes the absorber. Its methods spread outward. Quietly. A bureaucracy here adopts Genoese accounting practices. A government there adopts Genoese debt management, and one calls it Genoese. It is simply efficient. And efficiency spreads faster than ideology. Imagine a modern city far from Italy. Its financial systems operate smoothly. Budgets are planned years ahead. Risk is diversified. No one in that city thinks about Genoa. And yet, Genoa is there. Not physically, conceptually. This is the final form of influence. To be present everywhere without being visible anywhere. Genoa understands this instinctively. It never wanted statues. Statues can be pulled down. It wanted methods. Methods survive revolutions. The city now exists mostly in rhythm. Morning routines, administrative cycles, maintenance schedules. These are the quiet sounds of endurance as night returns. Genoa does not transform. There is no dramatic shift. Lights come on, shutters close. The harbor reflects small points of light. Nothing more, nothing less. This consistency is comforting. It tells you that nothing unexpected will happen. And for a city that has seen plague, war, rivalry, and decline, this is enough. Imagine standing at the edge of the water, not thinking about history, just listening. The sea moves the same way it always has. Genoa no longer asks it for anything. No wealth, no opportunity. Only rhythm. The city has completed its negotiation with time. It has accepted its place, not as a center, not as a leader, but as a stabilizer, and stabilizers are rarely celebrated. But without them, everything else shakes. This long passage continues to stretch. There is no climax waiting. No final lesson to deliver. The lesson has already been lived. That power can be quiet. That survival can be boring. That endurance often looks like stillness. Now, allow your attention to drift further away. You do not need to hold onto the city anymore. It will remain whether you remember it or not. That is its final success. Let the water move without urgency. Let the streets remain narrow and protective. Let time continue without announcement. Nothing important is about to happen. And in Genoa, that means everything is exactly as it should be. Rest. The city is awake enough for both of you now. Welcome back. There is almost nothing left to explain now. Only something left to feel. At this stage, the city is no longer something you look at. It is something you remain inside of, even when you stop paying attention. Genoa has become quiet in a way that does not ask for silence. It simply no longer needs noise. Imagine the city early in the morning before intention returns to the streets. Not sunrise, earlier than that. The moment when the sky is still undecided. The harbor is there, of course. It always is, but it no longer announces itself. No horns, no urgency. Just water touching stone with the patience of something that has done this forever. Genoa is now fully aware of what it is. Not a beginning. Not an ending. A remainder, and remainders are powerful things. They tell you what survived when everything unnecessary was removed. Once, Genoa needed ships, then it needed routes. Then it needed institutions. Now it needs nothing more than to continue being itself. This is not stagnation. It is completion. Think about how rare that is. Most histories end because something breaks. A war, a revolution, an exhaustion that becomes collapse. Genoa does not break. It finishes. It reaches a point where adding more would only dilute what already works. So it stops expanding inwardly. It allows itself to settle. The city becomes inward-facing, not in fear, but in familiarity. Streets that once felt defensive now feel comforting. Walls that once protected from invasion now protect from excess. Genoa has learned that too much openness can be as dangerous as isolation, so it keeps its narrowness, its shadows, its inward curves. They are no longer tactical. They are emotional. Imagine someone living here now, who has never known Genoa as a power. They walk these streets without thinking of empires. They sit near the water without imagining fleets. And yet, they live inside the result of all those centuries, their sense of caution, their preference for stability, their distrust of spectacle, all inherited, not consciously, naturally. This is how cities speak across time, not through monuments, but through behavior. Genoa does not tell its people who it was. It teaches them how to move, slowly, carefully, without exaggeration. The city has become a teacher that no longer speaks, only demonstrates. Imagine standing still somewhere above the harbor, not watching ships, watching light, the way it moves across stone, the way it fades without drama. This is the same light that once illuminated contracts, maps, calculations, that quietly reshaped continents. Now it illuminates nothing important, and that is the point. Importance has already passed through here. What remains is calm. There is a deep trust in this calm, a sense that nothing needs to be proven anymore. Genoa does not compare itself to other cities. It no longer needs contrast. It has already been what others are trying to become, and it has already let go of what they are still chasing. This gives the city a softness that is not weakness. It is relief. The relief that comes when survival is no longer a question. Only maintenance, and maintenance, when done long enough, becomes peace. Think again of the sea. Not as history remembers it, not filled with arrows and routes and ambitions, but as it is now, predictable, reliable, still capable of storms, but no longer interpreted as destiny. Genoa finally sees the sea clearly, not as promise, not as threat, but as presence. Something that exists alongside the city, not above it. This relationship took centuries to mature, and now it is complete. Nothing more is demanded from either side. As this realization deepens, the story loosens even further. There is nothing left to connect, no theme waiting to resolve. Only continuity without tension. Genoa has moved beyond narrative, beyond rise and fall. It exists in a state where history has already happened and no longer needs retelling. This is why the ending must be gentle. Because Genoa itself never ended loudly, .it withdrew from urgency, .it stepped aside from drama, and allowed the world to continue without it. That is not disappearance. That is confidence. Confidence that what mattered has already been integrated. You can feel this confidence in the stillness of the streets, in the lack of performance, in the absence of insistence. Nothing here tries to convince you of anything. It simply remains. And remaining, after so much movement, is the rarest achievement of all. As this pre-final passage stretches out, there is no instruction left for you. No conclusion to prepare for. Only the suggestion that you no longer need to hold the city in focus. It will not slip away if you stop listening. It has already placed itself where it intends to stay. In the background. In the systems. In the habits that shape the modern world without announcing their origin. Very soon, there will be one final section. Not to explain Genoa. Not to summarize it. Only to let it go. But not yet. For now, let the harbor remain still. Let the light fade without urgency. Let the city sit comfortably inside the time it earned. You can rest here. Nothing is ending. Everything has already settled. Welcome back. There is nothing left to prepare for now, no direction to follow, no distance to measure. The story has already slowed as much as it ever will. What remains is not an ending, but a release. Genoa no longer needs to be carried forward in words. It has reached the place where cities sometimes arrive, if they are patient enough. A place beyond explanation. Imagine the city one last time, but do not imagine it as you have before. Do not look for ships. Do not look for buildings. Do not look for history. Just feel the weight of something that is finished becoming. The streets are there, but they are no longer paths. They are impressions, stone worn smooth not by a single generation, but by countless ordinary days layered on top of one another. This is what survives longest, not moments of greatness, not moments of disaster, but repetition. Genoa has always understood repetition. Trade depends on it. Trust depends on it. Stability is nothing more than repetition that has proven itself reliable. Over centuries, the city repeated itself into permanence, and now it rests inside that permanence. Nothing pulls it forward anymore. Nothing pushes it back. It simply remains. Think about how the sea sounds at night. Not during storms, not during celebration, just the sound of water moving because it always has. Genoa no longer listens to this sound as instruction. It listens to Ida's confirmation. Confirmation that continuity exists without effort, that time passes even when nothing is demanded of it. This is the final gift the city offers. Not inspiration, not warning, permission. Permission to stop striving, permission to exist without momentum. The Republic once needed vigilance. It needed calculation. It needed awareness of every shift in wind and politics. That era is complete. The vigilance dissolved into habit, the calculation into systems, the awareness into instinct. And instinct does not need to be conscious. It simply works. Genoa's influence now lives in places that will never speak its name. In budgets that balance. In risks that are shared. In decisions that choose restraint over excess. These things do not feel historical. They feel normal. And that is how you know the city succeeded. The greatest achievement of any civilization is to make its values invisible. To embed them so deeply that the world forgets they were ever new. Genoa did not conquer minds. It trained them. Quietly, patiently, without claiming credit. Now imagine the city without you observing it. The harbor will still reflect light. The streets will still narrow inward. The walls will still stand. Nothing depends on your attention anymore. That is important. Stories usually end because someone stops telling them. This one ends because it no longer needs telling. Genoa has stepped out of narrative and into background, into structure, into rhythm. It is no longer something you follow. It is something you pass through without noticing. And that is the safest place for power to be. As the final moments of attention soften, there is no lesson to Remember.no summary to hold on to. Only a sensation. The sensation of a city that learned when to stop. That learned when enough was truly enough. That did not confuse silence with absence. Genoa is not absent.it is settled. Like a thought you no longer need to think because it has already shaped your behavior. You do not need to keep it awake.it will not disappear if you let go.it has already distributed itself into the world. So now, you may let the image fade. Let the harbor dissolve into darkness. Let the stone lose its edges. Let the sea continue without shape. Nothing important will be missed. Nothing is about to happen. And in the language of this city, that means everything is complete. Rest. The story is no longer moving.it is holding, and it will keep holding long after sleep arrives.